So many businesses are having to deal with incredible amount of uncertainty during this COVID pandemic, and it's really been a roller coaster ride for so many of them. Looking at federal programs, not knowing if you're going to open, how you're going to manage. But it seems at this point in the process that we have reached a form of equilibrium. At least most of us have. Not everyone has. Perhaps one of the most turbulent industries of all is the event planning industry. I'm joined this morning by Leanne Andrecyk and Rémi Lefebrve, and they are both of Zed Events. Welcome. Thank you for talking with me.
Good morning. Nice to see you,
Good morning,
Dawn.
Dawn.
Right. So please tell me a little bit about how long you've been in the event planning industry, and have you seen anything to compare with this before?
Myself, personally, I've been in events for probably close to 20 years now, and the answer is no. We've never witnessed anything that has so drastically affected our industry in my lifetime. And I'm sure Rémi would agree with me.
I do echo that 100%. Yeah, 15 years into my career in events and entertainment, and nothing like this has ever happened before.
Right. So Rémi, just I guess building on this, how many events were you looking at having planned? Were you working on when the COVID pandemic sort of hit us back in March?
Yeah, between my role with Zed Events and my role with eSource Event Registration, I had about 35 events on the docket, all to take place from early March into kind of early to mid-June. All of those have now canceled. 2 of them have rescheduled, and 1 is still operational because they're an educational facility and they've moved to online. But this was the busiest season, and it vanished out from under us. It was quite a shock.
Right. So Leanne, looking at the number of events that have rescheduled, I mean, 2 out of the 35 that Rémi referenced there, that's a fairly low percentage that we're able to rebook. What is the challenge in rebooking, and how do you deal with all of that?
The biggest challenge is actually finding a new date. So what we're challenged with right now is finding room within an already busy event schedule to reschedule events, whether it be in the summer, in the fall, or next year, combined with will we still be able to have those events? Because as you know, it's still quite up in the air as to when all of these public restrictions will be lifted and we can actually gather again. So we're working with all of our venues, primarily in Halifax, Nova Scotia area, but we do operate throughout the Maritimes, and they are struggling to find those new dates for the fall time amongst a roster that's already quite full. Halifax in particular is a very event heavy city, and so they're struggling to squeeze people in, because you also don't want to have an event every night of the week. Otherwise, you're going to lose your attendance, because not everybody can maintain that type of social schedule, even in a perfect world, let alone what we're dealing with right now.
So let's backtrack to March for just a little bit, and what this looked like at the beginning. We weren't sure how long it was going to last. Was it going to be a few weeks? Was it going to be a month? And we still don't really know how long this is going to last. But people weren't able to cancel their events right away, were they? I mean, there was some, I guess, confusion, a little bit of hesitation in whether to cancel or not to cancel. Can you tell me what that was like? It was almost like a Wild West version, I guess, of it for a while.
Yeah, it really was. So like any business transaction, people who hold events, whether they're entertainment events or corporate events, they're in a lot of contractual obligations with various suppliers, starting with the venues. So of course, breaking any of those contracts incurs various different fees and costs. So people struggle to balance between public health and their own bottom line, and that may sound like an easy decision, but throughout March, when we really didn't know what this was going to look like or how it was going to play out, you do struggle to balance those two things. And if the suppliers that you're working with in the venue where you're booked has not yet jumped on board with to institute the force majeure of most contracts, that means your fees still apply. So we had to spend quite a bit of time working with those venues and negotiating with them. And I will say, a side note, everybody was completely on board with making it work for both themselves as a provider and the clients who are contracted with them. So at no time did we get any type of hardcore, we're not going to work through this, but it still involved several conversations and how do we work through it. It got easier when the lockdown became mandatory. For the first couple of weeks in March, of course, here in Nova Scotia, they were suggested protocols, and once they became law, then that enabled for all of the contract holders to act on the force majeure clause.
Right. Now, Rémi, as a senior producer, your role is always to take the stress away from the event organizer. How, in a situation like this, do you continue to, I guess, hold someone's hand, make sure that they don't panic, and keep your own spirits up, really? How do you manage that?
Dawn, I think it really comes down to communication and to knowing that clients are more than clients, they're people, they're friends. I obviously have so many of my own fears and stressors right now, but in servicing and in partnering and collaborating with others, my focus, and it's actually been quite helpful for me, is to put that cap on and say, where are things going to be in 6 months? And how can I be the pillar and the voice of reason and of calm certitude for my clients? We have the benefit of having so many contacts and colleagues in the industry. And so we've had detailed conversations together. And all of us in the event world are kind of in the back scenes right now, collaborating via text message and email to see how we're going to join together to create excellent events for our clients who have postponed or for when they come back. I think there was that initial pain and ripping the Band-Aid off and accepting that this sucks, but it's necessary and this is really helping the greater good. So how can we take this downtime to reflect, to support each other and be together and come out better as all, as a team? Right.
Leanne, from a business perspective, you guys typically will, I guess, get paid when an event is held. I mean, I'm sure there's so much as a deposit and so much you get paid after the fact. Right. With events being canceled and postponed, how is this hitting your bottom line?
Drastically. We are at a complete standstill from an operational point of view. For now, we know it will turn around and come back, but we are a service provider. We are a consultant, and if we're not producing and planning an event and ultimately executing the event, then we are not getting paid. So we're very grateful for the various programs that the federal and the provincial governments have put out there for small business, like Zed Events and eSource, and we are thoroughly investigating those options to keep us afloat until such times things turn around.
Are either of you concerned about a long-term drop-off in the event business? Do you think people will be, I guess, availing more of virtual technologies and virtual meetings as opposed to the in-person get-togethers and galas and meetings that they've typically enjoyed, that have become increasingly popular actually over the past few years?
We're Maritimers, and ultimately we like to gather. So I'm not concerned about gathering again. I am a little concerned about when we can gather. It will come back, but it's very unknown right now. And when it does come back, what type of situation are we in economically to start routing funds to major events again as a provider who would hire a consultant like us to help them? And what position will guests and attendees be in financially purchase those tickets and attend.
Mhm.
So it would be silly of me to say I'm not concerned. I know it will come back, but the time frame, I'm still waiting to see where that's going to take us. I think that there are some folks using a virtual platform, and it does serve well for certain events, but for galas and entertainment events, of course, in person is better. So there's definitely an opportunity for some to take advantage of the virtual options, while others will have to wait it out.
Rémi, any thoughts from you in terms of, I guess, the changing nature of events or new technologies that are going to be implemented more and integrated more into this industry?
Mm-hmm. I do definitely think that we're going to see more of a push for that, especially in Atlantic Canada, where we are traditionally just a little bit behind the kind of international event curve for technology adoption and usage in our events. I think a lot of the local players will start to realize the benefit of offering at least a strong digital component. There is likely to be kind of an after effect of fear that will remain with a lot of people after such a trying situation. So I think that there will be some people who will be willing to shift to that digital model, potentially at a slightly lower price point that typically accompanies it. But we have an opportunity to rethink how we deliver that guest experience and how we create excellent and touching moments for people. So for that, I must admit, I'm quite excited to explore those options. I think it's all very positive.
Any ideas from either of you on when we can see a return to normal, or whatever this new normal is going to be? When will events become a thing again?
Well, I hope by the fall, if everybody stays the blazes home and is mindful of their fellow colleagues and friends and family, that if we hunker down, we can see ourselves out of this sooner than later. So I'm hopeful that everyone thinks about the people next to them, as opposed to the people within their own family, and in a way that we can be in this together and get on top of it by the fall, or at the very least by the new year.
Excellent. Well, Leanne Andrecyk and Rémi Lefebrve, thank you so much for your time. Until we meet again.
We will gather again. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.
Take care.